Hi everybody and welcome back to another lesson. In these couple of lessons we have been talking about ways you can practice for TOEFL 2026. Today we're going to talk about the reading section, and I'm going to show you 3 ways you can use to practice reading and get the best of your preparation. Remember, reading is a comprehensive / receptive skills, so you have to react to a piece of text. They give you a piece of text, a piece of passage, and then you have to answer some questions. As we discussed it in our session about reading, in the new version of TOEFL in 2026, the texts are smaller. Okay, so you have more pieces of text and fewer questions. So for example, instead of having 3 big passages and a couple of questions, you get 10 small pieces of text from different walks of life, and then you have to answer a few questions based on them. So this is one thing to remember. The second thing to remember is that the question usually wants you to do a series of things. You either need to understand the whole passage, or you need to infer some information, or you need to react to some references, for example, the words or sentences that are taken from the text, and then they may help you answer the question. As always, remember, we are practicing to find the best answer. Because there might be more than one answer that looks like it is the right answer, but it is not. So always grow this mentality that you are looking for the best answer, not the only answer. So as you see here, an example of a passage, for example, as you see, this passage is very short. And there are some questions that are coming after that. Questions are usually, why did the author say this? What this word refers to? And what is the aim of? What is the purpose of? And all other reference and general questions like this. And these are the things that I want you to practice. So the first method that we use is something called micro-reading. Micro-reading means instead of reading a long book or a novel or a very complete article, you practice micro-reading. You find chunks of text from different sources, from the internet, from a magazine, from emails, from anything that you can get your hands on. For my reading sources, I usually use this website called the Electric Typewriter. I have recommended this website in many of my videos. You can quickly find a lot of articles, very famous articles, and then you can use them for your practices. So in this case, we are looking to micro-read. So I'm going to choose some article. So this website, for example, I chose an article, it leads me to the main website. What I do is this: instead of reading the whole article, I choose one paragraph of it like this, okay? And then I practice micro-reading. Now, what should I do with this paragraph or these paragraphs that I get from different articles? What I do is that first of all, I read it once and try to summarize it for myself in 1 or 2 sentences. This practice helps me train my brain and my eyes to look for the main idea and the gist of the text at the first look. All right. Usually, unfortunately, a lot of people are trained in a very bad way. When they see a text, they start looking for new words and they underline new words. This is a very bad habit. It doesn't really help you understand the text, and it's very destructive for your reading skills. So don't do that. In micro-reading, so we try to read, let's say 10 paragraphs from different sources. We choose a paragraph, we try to summarize it, and then 1 or 2 sentences. And then you can, for example, check your summary, and then you can ask AI to give you a summary, and then you can compare your summary. Remember, there are no best summaries here. We're not gonna really make this very difficult for ourselves. We're just practicing to make sure that we know what to do when it comes to a text, and we know what the gist is, what a main idea is. And this practice will help me in the long run improve my skills for these type of questions. The second thing you do is you randomly choose a word. For example, unslick. Let's say I know the meaning or I don't know the meaning, doesn't matter. Or I choose another word. I choose, let's say, another word. Let's say hair here. And then if I know the word, I try to realize, what does this word do here? What does this word refer to? This exercise will help me prepare for specific questions in TOEFL. In the case of the other word, unslick or unordinary, whether you know the meaning or not, you should always figure out the meaning and context. So I read this whole sentence, for example, from here to here, or a little further or a little back, to see what does this word mean in this context. I try to figure it out, and then I write it somewhere for myself. And then I do this again. I choose a paragraph from another article, another story, another resource, and then I try to get the gist, get the main idea, summarize it for myself. Then I read it again. I find some random words, and then I try to figure out what do they mean in the context and what are they referring to. Okay, that was the first one. We call it micro reading. In practice, you can do 1 or 2 paragraphs per day until you really improve your attention span and also the way you focus on the text. The second way to practice reading is to check practice tests. So if you remember, I told you that there are currently 2 practice tests available on the website. You can actually access them. What you basically need to do is simple. You find a piece of reading, for example, a real test, for example, this one or this one. And then you go back to the answer key. Each practice test has answer key. You go back to the answer key, and then you check the answers. You read the answers and you try to figure out what is the connection. So for example, question number 12, the answer is C. Let's go back to question number 12. So the question to number 12 is C. I look at C here, and then I try to look back at the text and find the connection. What makes the C the right answer? And then I kind of look at the question again. It says, how can customers enroll? So it's a how question. And then I look at all these beginnings that we talked about. All right. And then we try to see how this became the right answer. This way we can familiarize ourselves with the logic of questions. What's the logic behind questions? A lot of times students fail to answer these questions correctly, especially in the reading, because they don't know what's the logic. They don't know what they need to look for. And this can really help your brain. Remember, sometimes you think you know, but it's just subconsciously you're not focusing on the right thing when it comes to the test environment. So it's something that you need to practice. One of the good things about practice is that when you practice a lot in the right way, your brain is trained to be able to find the right thing. Even if your focus is not 100%, you can still use your natural brain skills to be able to find the connections and find the answers, to be able to connect the dots. So this is a very nice exercise. As your second way of practicing reading, you can check the answers and try to find the connection between the answer and the text and how they match. And as always, remember, most of the work is done in the practice itself. So the best way to practice is to practice, all right? So now you know what to look for. You know what to do. You need to have a schedule for your practice. If reading is a skill that you are struggling with, it means that you need to spend more time on it. So for example, if you spend 1 hour a day, half an hour a day, reading can help you, and your reading skills are not as good as other skills, it means that you need to practice that more. So that's how you plan it, and that's how you fit it into your schedule. If you remember in the session about practicing writing, I told you how to use AI to replicate questions. You can do the same thing here. So let's say this is a read a notice question, and I'm gonna make more examples like this to be able to practice. I simply do this. I take a screenshot. Of course, there are more questions, but I just, for the sake of example, so that I can fit it on my screen, I took a screenshot of only the text and 2 questions. You then submit that to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to replicate similar questions. Let's say I need, for example, 3 more examples. There you have it. You see, I use the word replicate so that ChatGPT can understand what I mean. You see, it is following the same style, format, and difficulty level. You can ask ChatGPT to increase the difficulty level or reduce it. Remember, if you're practicing. So there you have it. You have more examples of such questions. All right, everybody. So 3 ways to practice reading: micro reading, checking answers, and finding the connection. And finally, replicating questions and practicing as often as possible, depending on how strong or weak you are in that particular question type or skill in the test. Remember, practice is key. Practice, check your answers, keep an eye on your answers and see your performance, how well you're doing. You can reach out to me and share your results. I can give you more feedback. But remember, you can be the best judge of yourself. Practice. Small, regular practice is always the best strategy. It does not tire you, it won't frustrate you, and it will help you get the best of your preparation. In the next lesson this week, we're going to talk about how to practice for listening. So keep an eye out on my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Share this video with your friends who are practicing for TOEFL 2026, and comment section is always open for your questions. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.